In Los Angeles today, Mayor Sam Yorty described the racial climate in that city as tense. This appraisal was made 12 days after a deadly riot erupted between black Muslims and police, first outside then inside Nation of Islam Temple 27 in south central Los Angeles. One Muslim, Ronald Stokes, was shot to death, and 6 others were wounded. Police casualties included Officer Frank Tomlinson, whose elbow is shattered by gunfire, Officer Richard Anderson, struck on the head with a 5-gallon water jug, and Officer Stanley Kensick, knocked to the ground, beaten, and kicked in the head. The origin of the riot is disputed. Police say the violence erupted after Officers Tomlinson and Kensick had stopped to question Monroe X. Jones, who was selling clothing out of his car to another Muslim, Fred X. Jingles, near the temple. Police said the officers were jumped and beaten while questioning the men, and that during the melee, Mr. Jones pulled Officer Kensick's gun from its holster and shot Officer Tomlinson with it. The Muslims charged that Officer Kensick twisted Mr. Jingles' arm behind his back without cause, and that police reinforcements called to the scene had invaded their temple and engaged in quote-unquote Gestapo tactics. It took 75 officers to subdue the riot, which William H. Parker, Los Angeles police chief since 1950, called, quote, the most brutal conflict I've seen since I've been here, unquote. 17 Muslims were arraigned on charges of assault with intent to commit great bodily harm. They were all freed on bail of $10,500 each, pending a preliminary hearing May 24th. In addition, a grand jury has been called to investigate the riot. On Friday, Malcolm X, national spokesman for the black Muslims, excoriated Chief Parker at a press conference in Los Angeles.
How could this brutal crime against innocent, unarmed human beings occur in America with no public outcry by the well-thinking Americans? It is because Police Chief William H. Parker spread false propaganda in order to camouflage the true facts in one of the most savage atrocities ever inflicted upon unarmed, innocent human beings in a so-called civilized society. And simply because Chief William H. Parker's well-armed stormtroopers wore police uniforms doesn't make the criminal actions of the policemen any more right than the uniforms worn by Hitler and his uniformed Gestapo police who shot down the innocent Jews in Nazi Germany.
Today, Mayor Yorty told his press conference that at least half the black Muslims in Los Angeles had criminal records, and that he was 100% behind Chief Parker. He called brutality charges wild and exaggerated, adding that those who make such charges, quote, want to make it seem the police are the ones who attack the person, when exactly the opposite is true. Anytime you get a group which preaches hatred, you are apt to have trouble, and the Muslims preach hatred. This group can set race relations in our community back 10 years. They probably have already, unquote. Over the weekend, Malcolm X remained in Los Angeles to speak at Mr. Stokes' funeral at Temple 27.
The person whom you have come to know as Ronald Stokes, we know him as Brother Ronald. Everyone who knew him had to give him credit for being a good man, a clean man, an intelligent man, and an innocent man when he was murdered.
He singled out Mayor Yorty for criticism.
And as far as your mayor is concerned, I should say their mayor, a professional liar, put it in the paper that they broke into our religious place of worship and got records that they can use to prove that most of us have criminal records. Martin Luther King has been to jail. Please, why you can't name a black man in this country who is sick and tired of the hell that he's catching who hasn't been to jail. To have once been a criminal is no disgrace. To remain a criminal is the disgrace. I formerly was a criminal. I formerly was in prison. I'm not ashamed of that. You never can use that over my head. And that he's using the wrong stick. I don't feel that stick. I went to prison because I believed in men like Sam Yorty. I went to prison because I trusted men like Sam Yorty. I went to prison following the philosophy of men like Sam Yorty. But since I've been following the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I have been reformed, and that's more, please. That's more than Sam Yorty and Chief Parker and all these other white politicians have been able to do with the inmates in the prisons of this state.
Finally, after vilifying his white critics as hypocritical, Mr. X issued a veiled warning.
The white man is tricking you. He doesn't call it violence when he lands troops in South Vietnam. He doesn't call it violence when he lands troops in Berlin. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, he didn't say get nonviolent. He said, praise the Lord, but pass the ammunition. But when someone attacks you, when someone comes at you with a club, when someone comes at you with a rope, when someone comes at you with a gun, despite the fact that you've done nothing. He tells you, suffer peacefully. And how long can you suffer after suffering for 400 years? And I, for one, as a Muslim, believe that the white man is intelligent enough. If he were made to realize how black people really feel and how fed up we are without that old compromising sweet talk, why, you're the one that make it hard for yourself. The white man believes you when you go to him with that old sweet talk, because you've been sweet talking him ever since he brought you here. Stop sweet talking him. Tell him how you feel. Tell him what kind of hell you've been catching, and let him know that if he's not ready to clean his house up, if he's not ready to clean his house up, he shouldn't have a house. It should catch on fire and burn down.